Interest in real estate? How about wealth? Well, they go hand in hand. And here, you'll learn all about it. Welcome to Be the Bank, a podcast where we discuss and debate the topics centered around real estate investing. Your host, Justin Bogard, shares insights into investing in real estate to create real wealth and passive income for you and your family. He'll share stories of real estate investments done right, walk you through the process of owning a real estate note, and most importantly, educate you so you can be the bank. This is Be the Bank, brought to you by Bright Path Notes. Now, here's your host, Justin Bogard.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number 26, brought to you by Bright Path Notes. And today, I'm going to be talking about some things that I see on Facebook. We're going to be talking about some problems in Georgia. And we're going to be talking about some back office issues that you can probably avoid. Stay tuned. Second time this year that I've done that, Richard.
Yeah.
Pushing the wrong button. See, I'm looking at the camera. Yeah. And those of you that are just listening to this podcast, we do record the video of this on our Bright Path Notes YouTube channel, so come check us out. Episode number 26, brought to you by Bright Path Notes. But I had clicked the outro video, I think, by mistake, instead of the little transition break, the little 6-7 second video there. I was supposed to, so hey, it happens.
It happens.
So how are you, dude?
Great. It is a pretty day here in California. It's actually getting a little bit warmer. Warmer for us means that it's north of San Francisco. It's going from a 55-degree day to 60, which I realize is blazing compared to where you are. But
yeah, we're getting ready to get minus temperatures for 3 days in a row.
I understand. You guys are, what are they calling it? The big blast or something like that?
I don't know, but I do need to get some groceries just because I will prefer not to travel outside the home office during those times. Richard, in an opening little segment there. Oh, by the way, how are we in the same house with the same stuff, but we're not next to each other? This is so weird.
Well, I got a new piano, dude. I don't know about you, but
So if you guys are listening to this broadcast, check us out on the video because we actually have the same virtual background today. So it's kind of funny that we just have the same one. So it looks like we're in the same location, but we're really not in the same location. So this is the fun thing about doing this stuff virtually, right, Richard?
Mm-hmm.
So, dude, I have been looking at a few Facebook groups and posts recently just because they come in my feed, and I casually look at note groups and other note and investing pages, and I also look at regular real estate investors, and there are more and more of them today that are getting back into creative financing and offering to sell houses on terms, right? Carrying back seller financing notes. And there's a few of them bragging about what they're doing and how easy it is and the cash flow, and they're posting their numbers and their situation. And I'm kind of skimming through it just because I'm just kind of curious as to, how they're setting up their stuff. And it's just, you can tell that they are not seasoned in the business because there's several mistakes that they're making and a couple of, SEC type of files that they're doing with their posts and stuff. And I just get a good chuckle out of it. So I just want buyer beware. If you're getting your information from Facebook, or if you're getting information from somewhere where it's a free source, that somebody that doesn't make this lifestyle their expertise, don't necessarily take that as the Bible as to what they do is the compliant and the right way. You definitely want to get in front of people that actually do this for a living full time. So that's kind of my little soapbox there.
Yeah, Justin, another good example of that is I flipped about 20 houses, as I've probably told you, and that's not a lot, but it's enough to sort of know the ropes, right?
Right.
And I had to kind of smile when all these HGTV shows would come on, and they were talking about how they got into the house and did all the renovations and got out in 60 days and blah blah blah, and they would go down what they were spending their costs on and things like that. And it was just kind of funny because things like permit costs and transfer fees and things like that were just sort of left out of the equation,
right?
When they're figuring their profitability. And so this, what you're saying, is sort of along the same line, which is the Facebook crowd tends to run a little bit fast and loose.
Yeah.
And buyer beware, consumer beware.
Consumer beware. There you go. Consumer beware, viewer beware, listener beware, everything beware, right? Yeah.
Right.
Just be cautious. That's all we're saying.
Right.
So, Richard, you had kind of divulged to me a few days ago on a personal call we had with each other about some kind of issues and new challenges you've been having in a certain state named Georgia. We will not leave the state name out. We will go ahead and say it's the state of Georgia. And I'll go ahead and let you kind of prep our listener here as to the problems that you're having with as it pertains to chains.
Right. So I'm actually having two issues, I'll call it. One is the number of payoffs in my portfolio has increased dramatically, which after I've put all this work into a lot of these, I'm not liking. And the fact that a lot of them are partials, I'm not liking because it's, the only reason you do a partial is for the tail. Now, why is that happening? Unlike when we went through the recession, when rates were up and equity was down, coming out of the pandemic, rates are still relatively low, but equity is way up. So a lot of people who couldn't qualify for conventional loans before now can. So they're taking the opportunity while the market's still good to refinance. What that's doing is that's triggering reviews of chains of title.
Okay.
I have a number of deals that are in Georgia. And what I've found is that there is a nuance, and this is unfortunately hitting even some of the larger producers, note holders. When I say note holders, I mean people who are owning thousands of notes. So it's not just little guys. There's a nuance in the notary statements. So, for instance, the notary statements that I get in California say that the document has been executed and this person has presented themselves to me, showing me my ID and, is giving me their signature and blah, blah, blah. That won't cut it in the state of Georgia. If you have, maybe you filed that, maybe it's wonderful, because what I'm finding out is the note that I sold has been owned by 4 different people, and state of Georgia has come back and said all of those notaries are invalid. The difference is that the notary statement has to say that it was the document that was being signed, either the assignment or the quitclaim deed or whatever, has to be signed in the presence of the notary, and they have to show. So in the presence of is the glitch. And I'm now having to go back with all the previous, for some reason, I keep getting stuck as being the coordinator for these type of activities.
It's because you're such a nice guy.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know what it is, called lame or whatever.
Yeah. But, lucky.
Yeah, I mean, one of the funds that originated one of these doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure yet how we're going to resolve that. But if you have any deals in Georgia, go back and look at your notarized statements and see if they say what I just related. And if they don't, it's worth it to get them changed. Pain in the butt, but it's worth it to get it changed because it'll save you a headache later on.
So this is somebody, some lawyer or some attorney. I don't think this is the attorney general going after this per se, but somebody is just making this ridiculous. And this is absolutely ridiculous. So when you have a notary, they are supposed to be taking your ID and verifying who you are and validating that they are actually signing the document in front of that notary. That is the notary's job to do that. Right. So it's just kind of asinine how you have to go through this and put that verbiage on the statement that the person signed and notarized, and having to go revisit who owned this debt before you, and if they don't exist, now what do you do? Right? It's a process that's just going to be a nightmare for you for a little bit until you find a good rhythm for it, and then you may have to ask for forgiveness on some of that if you can't find the person that signed it before, because that wasn't your fault. You weren't involved with it before then. So it's just to me, it just seems it's very annoying. It's very frustrating for me, even though I'm not involved with it with you currently. But it's just frustrating to hear about that and how sad that it has to be that way.
Yeah, I mean, it can get expensive. One of the clients, and the problem is that when these these borrowers refi, they're going into conventional loans. That's great, but
Yeah.
they're using different bank notaries, and those bank notaries are real title companies, and they're real sticklers for chain of title. Which,
Yeah.
and I'm not faulting for them
Yeah.
that, but a lot of the other, if you've got a contract for deed or something like that, let's face it, a lot of these title companies are a little bit fast and loose,
Yeah.
and it won't cut it if they're conventionally refinancing.
Yeah, it's just, and I don't have the whole entire story. I'm just hearing it from Richard's side, of course. But in defense of my buddy Richard here, on the surface, it seems pretty ridiculous that this is happening. And then it's not just Richard; it's a lot of people that have been affected by this. So, like Richard said, just look at your stuff and see how the notary block was signed, and hopefully you won't get called to have this action change, but maybe you will.
Yeah, where one reason it gets a little bit sticky is because a lot of the notaries in California say, "Look, I'm only going to sign the recommended California form,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not going to notarize any other form." Then what do you do?
Right. Yeah. I mean, most people want to do things the compliant way and the right way to avoid having future issues just
Right.
like this. And that's what you and I both are big believers in. And that's what we try to do.
Right.
And it feels like sometimes you can't win.
Right.
You can't win with somebody. And it's, there's a way to do things, and there's no like Bible that says this is the exact way to do it and there will be no fault back to you. Sometimes this is just an interpretation of what you need to do and how to do it. So it's just unfortunate that it's happening to you right now. And hopefully it resolves itself quickly to where you don't have to spend a lot of time and money involved in it. But it is very annoying.
Right. And
least.
the biggest thing is, I mean, we all have, regardless of how big our shops are, this is what I call a backroom issue.
Yeah.
And if we have to handle it, it's a huge time sink.
Yes.
I mean, we've got stuff that can be much, much more productive. But if your shop starts to get a little bit bigger, like we are, you've all actually got to think about getting a good designated, detailed person who knows how to handle this type of stuff, and pay them to do it, because eventually it just gets too much and too costly.
Yeah, they can chase down things that need to be done. They can run with this. They can dovetail. Okay, I've stopped here. I'll pick up here later in 2 or 3 days. It's just it is as the people that are the executive level in the company, it's more difficult for them to manage that than it is for somebody that's the primarily what they do is handle tasks like that every day, all day.
Right. And for the most part, none of the servicers will do it.
Yeah.
And even if they do, it's on their time schedule. When I was young in this, I asked a servicer that will remain unnamed to foreclose on a property. And it was in the state of Alabama, and it took over 2 years. I subsequently found out that you can close in Alabama in 60 to 90 days, but it was largely because the servicer, went on vacation, didn't follow up, blah, blah, blah. It's just doesn't have the priority that it does for you.
So when you have a couple of loans, it's really easy to manage all the steps and the processes because, quite frankly, it's not a lot of work to do because you only have a couple of loans to deal with, right? And they may not be in sync at the same time, going through the same process steps on the same day. They could be, off in frequency and where they're at in the timeline process. But Richard and I have, many loans between us. I would venture to say, maybe 100 loans between us that we manage either together or outside of what we do together. And it can be a very laborious process if you don't have help. And we are, like we talked about before, we strive to do these things the right way in the beginning because we know the headaches in the end from our mentors that have warned us about that. Do this stuff the right way, stay on top of it, make sure your documents are recorded, make sure you hold them in your possession, make sure they're originals, all these things, make sure the borrower's making their interim payments and, all that stuff. So now Richard and I have these processes in place today, but before today, we didn't necessarily have, 3 or 4 people helping us out and other vendors that can work with us like we have been more streamlined the past couple of years. So yeah, it's once you probably, Richard, I don't know, you put a number on it, but I'm going to say about probably 8 loans, 6 to 8 loans, you probably need to start getting some help at that point.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And the difficulty is that how do you get somebody who A, knows the field, and B, knows it well enough to continue to do it? Like I've gone to
Yeah.
a couple of transaction coordinators for realtors. For those of you who don't know this, a TC, as they call them, when a realtor does a sales of property, they have a transaction coordinator. They usually pay them $400 or $500, and they basically do all the disclosures and everything else. And they're well worth it.
I was just going to say that is the best use of money you probably can spend on a deal is
huge.
that money right there.
Yeah, it's huge because they cross all the T's, dot all the I's.
They
They've
do.
done it a gazillion times, and they know what to do. So if you can get somebody like that who is willing to help you out, and you say, look, this is what you need to do. You make a video for them.
Yeah.
What you can do with Zoom or anything like that, and say, all right, Bill or Sally, whatever their name is, this is how you do this, so that they can pull that up every time and refer back to it. It's a godsend.
It absolutely is. I'm just sitting here thinking in my mind how many times I've been involved in the transaction as the coordinating party, or if you will, the project manager of the whole thing, or quarterbacking this deal.
Mhm.
And it's a process, right? The title company, you have to deal with them in a certain way and follow their rules and their processes. And then the seller and the buyer that are involved with note sales that we're doing, we have to make sure that the borrower's involved and making sure everyone's in line with their steps, and then having a master list of everything that I got to keep in control as a quarterback. Believe me, $400 or $500 spent for someone else to do it, a transaction coordinator, is well worth it.
Yeah, and you're very good at this, Justin, in terms of making what I call single-use videos.
Yeah.
Videos on how to fill out an assignment of deed or whatever it is, because you may get somebody to help that doesn't know what they're doing at all. If they can sit there and go back and forth through it, and then that's wonderful. It's a wonderful way to do that.
Yeah, and then you find out if they do it 10, 12 times, they actually find even more efficiencies inside of that process and refine it even more for the next person to do it. And so it just becomes a better, cleaner way to do it. And then you, as the executive, can free up more of your time to go after more, highly focused things that you need to take care of. Maybe tracking down deals, or finding investors, or liquidating assets and things like that.
So tell me this, Justin, and this just popped into my mind. Would a group like Casey Wilson, which, by the way, is very good, I highly recommend them for holding your collateral files and getting your things recorded, would they do something like this, like I'm describing, or not?
I think they could do something like this. It's probably not a part of their a la carte package that they would do it, because it involves, working with a title company like on your behalf. But what I believe they do, and we don't use these services per se, but they do have some due diligence services. They do have some post due diligence services that you can pay extra for them to, review stuff before you buy it, make sure chains are good, to give you the reassurance during due diligence if you don't have the confidence that this is set up right. Like a lot of times, as you know, Richard, in non-performing loans, the chains can get kind of dirty pretty quickly, and they can be kind of funky, and you may have to fix some things. And those are ones that you really want to have an expert put their eyes on it and say, this is going to be a problem. You need to take care of this today before you buy it, and put the onus on the person you buy it from. And that way, you can make it your transaction a lot easier. On performing loans, there's typically not too many challenges like that. The ones that Richard and I buy, there's no other assignments. We are the first assignment, so we typically don't have to worry about that. We just worry about other things that show up on title. And Richard and I have done, thousands of these, so reviewed thousands of these things. So we've pretty familiar on what we are comfortable with releasing and versus what we need help with on having some things released on title.
Right.
Well, those are good questions. But yeah, we love KWA is our acronym for them. Casey Wilson and Associates. They're out of Irvine, California.
They are.
And they're a great custodian. There are many custodians out there. There's not a whole lot of them that make themselves well known to our industry, but they are one of them as well. And connect with us, and we're happy to share with a couple others with you as well.
Yeah, and they are very efficient. They unlike the servicer that I mentioned that had the slow processing of the foreclosure, they're much more efficient than that, because that's all they do. They don't service, they don't do anything else. Is they file, they hold collateral, and they're much more focused on it.
You're gonna get me going down a rabbit hole here. So I'm gonna talk about a few more things now. You got my brain going here, Richard.
Oh, okay.
So this bears in mind something to keep in mind that I'm a believer of is that you want to have your vendors not be a one-stop shop. You want to have your vendors do one specific thing they do really well. For example, most servicers, they will actually offer to hold your collateral for you. And then you find out that's not their area of expertise. So we stopped having a servicer hold our collateral and manage the process of recording and things like that because that's not their area of expertise. So we use a specialized vendor to manage the collateral custodian process of what we do with document management. And so our servicer now just worries about the loan and does what they do best. So I am a big believer of making sure the vendor you're using is highest and best used for that specific part of the business.
I agree. I mean, and that has borne itself out in a number of cases that we don't have to go through here, but I agree with what you're saying.
Right. All right, Richard, I think we have beaten this up well enough for episode number 26, and we're going to transition really quickly, and we're going to go to a little fun side.
All right.
As we said, this is episode number 26. This is the last episode of season number 4, and we will start season number 5 here in the new year when it will be released. And so this one will be released right before the end of the new year. Richard will probably already be in Vietnam and sipping on Mai Tais or whatever he's doing out there, probably kicking back with his lady, having a good old time. And wish you the safe travels, my friend, and the best of luck over there. You're going to spend 35 days in Vietnam. So hopefully we'll be able to record a podcast or two while you're out there and have a little bit of fun as well.
We are. I'm experimenting with making the latter part of it a workcation. So we've got a couple Airbnbs over there, and we're going to see how it works out too. I mean, Eddie Speed and everybody else keeps saying that this note business is portable. Well, we're going to put it to test.
We're going to put it full throttle. Mm-hmm. So as we've lightly touched on in previous episodes, we wanted to fully introduce and welcome Richard and I's new venture together, which is called American Note Buyers. So you're going to be seeing new branding coming your way in 2023 with the podcast that we're doing, with our monthly broadcast that we do. And then Richard and I also have managed the company that's going to manage a fund as well. And that's going to be exciting news that we're going to start introducing to the 2023 year as well. And so that's kind of the big news that we have to end with episode number 26. You're kind of cliffhanger into 2023. And so, Richard, if you have anything to add to that.
Well, I'm excited. Yeah, I got off the phone with the seller this morning before this broadcast, and he's got a small portfolio, five notes, not huge, but he wants to sell them all to us. And so I think you and I both know that we've got plenty of product to put into this.
Yep.
And I think it's a wonderful way to be passive in the industry. One of the reasons this fellow seller is selling is he said, look, I realize notes are fine and they're a good, but I just want to be totally passive. I don't want to get this occasional, gee, somebody's got their car parked in the front yard and can you ask them to move it type of notice and this type of thing. He doesn't even want that degree of hassle. So I very politely said, well, you know what? I'll be glad to take that hassle off your hands. You just sell us the notes.
Yeah. So this new vehicle that we have, this tool in our tool belt will be the fund, and it's going to be our bank to go after assets of just more than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at a time. We'll be able to buy, much larger pools as well, which is what we'd like to get into, which makes our acquisition costs come down a little bit, and then we can return that profit to our investors as well as the debt service that we owe. And we can go into a bigger explanation, with kind of some one-to-one consultation on kind of how the nuts and bolts of this really works. But yeah, if you guys have been listening to us for a while, you kind of know that we're in note investing and kind of how this being the bank works. And this is just another way to be the bank. And Richard and I are really good at managing the whole process and all the steps. And so we've had a lot of conversations with many people on how they, would like to see this work. And so we've got the paperwork done. We've got everything inked, and we're just waiting for the 2023 season. When you guys get this aired, it'll just be a few days after that when it goes live, and we'll be doing some introductions from emails. So be on the lookout for some new emails from American Note buyers. And this is episode number 26, the last episode for season number 4 of the Be the Bank podcast. And I'm Justin Bogard, and our partner here is Richard Thornton, and we will see you guys in the new year.
All right. Have a good jingle.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Be the Bank. We hope you learned something from today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us. Plus, check out our Bright Path Notes channel on YouTube and follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Be the Bank and on Instagram at Be the Bank Podcast. Be the Bank is sponsored by Bright Path Notes. Thanks again for listening.